Have you ever noticed how the nicest people in your life are the ones everyone takes advantage of? The friend who always says yes, always apologizes first, always puts others before themselves, and somehow they're always exhausted, always stressed, always attracting the worst relationships. Meanwhile, that one person who seems a little selfish, a little unpredictable, a little dangerous, everyone respects their boundaries immediately. Here's what's really happening. The nice person is trapped in a psychological prison they built themselves, and everyone around them has the keys. They've been trained to suppress every dark impulse, their anger, their selfishness, their need for control, and now they're completely predictable. Predictable people are controllable people. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about being good is actually making you weak? What if the very traits you're ashamed of are actually your greatest sources of power? That's where the point lies. When you stop apologizing for being human, the world around you goes into crisis because people are used to controlling you through guilt and shame. But the day you choose to embrace your full humanity, including the parts society calls dark, the game changes, and those who thought they knew you realize they know absolutely nothing about you. Carl Jung said, "I'd rather be whole than good." Now think about this for a moment. How much energy are you spending right now trying to be good? How much of your day is consumed by internal warfare between who you think you should be and who you actually are? Here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you. Your goodness is not making you more lovable. It's making you more controllable. And Jung understood that the very traits society taught you to suppress are actually the keys to psychological freedom and authentic power. The question is, are you ready to stop being good and start being whole? But that's what we'll talk about in the next part, because first you need to understand exactly how this programming got installed in your mind and why everyone around you benefits from keeping you trapped in this exhausting cycle. Let me tell you about a manipulation so subtle, so perfectly designed, that you've probably never even noticed it happening. From the moment you were born, you were trained to believe that having dark thoughts, feelings, or impulses made you a bad person. Anger, suppress it. Jealousy, feel ashamed. Selfishness, hide it at all costs. But here's the truth that perhaps no one has told you. This isn't moral guidance, it's psychological control. And the people who taught you to suppress these natural human emotions, they're still using them to manipulate you every single day. Jung called this the persona, the mask you wear to be socially acceptable. But here's what he discovered that will shock you. The more perfect your mask, the more powerless you become. Because when you refuse to acknowledge your capacity for darkness, you become completely predictable. And predictable people are controllable people. Think about the last time someone made you feel guilty for setting a boundary, or when someone accused you of being selfish for prioritizing your own needs. What did you do? You probably apologized, didn't you? You probably backed down. You probably gave them exactly what they wanted while telling yourself you were being the bigger person. That's not virtue. That's manipulation working perfectly. Jung understood that every human being contains what he called the shadow, all the traits and impulses we've been taught to deny. But here's the most important part. When you refuse to own your shadow consciously, it doesn't disappear. It goes underground, where it controls you from the unconscious mind. This is why good people often have the most explosive outbursts. This is why people pleasers attract the most manipulative relationships. This is why those who claim to be purely altruistic often end up being the most resentful. The shadow doesn't disappear when you suppress it. It grows stronger. And everyone around you can sense this. The manipulators, the energy vampires, the emotional parasites. They can smell your suppressed shadow from a mile away because it makes you so easy to control. But before we go deeper into how this shadow operates and why acknowledging it is the key to psychological freedom, I want you to hit that subscribe button. Because what we're about to explore goes against everything you've been taught about human nature, and you're going to need all the support you can get as you begin this transformation. Now, how long will you continue to let others exploit your need to be seen as good? How long will you keep giving your power away to people who don't deserve it? Because in the next section, we're going to explore exactly how your suppressed shadow is being used against you, and why Jung's approach to this problem is the most liberating psychological framework ever discovered. Jung discovered something that revolutionized psychology. We don't hate people for who they are. We hate them for who they remind us we could become. Every person who triggers intense anger, disgust, or judgment in you is actually showing you a part of your own shadow that you refuse to acknowledge. But here's the most important part. The people who manipulate you know this, even if they don't understand the psychology behind it. Think about the last person who really got under your skin, the one who made your blood boil just by existing. What trait did they display that bothered you so much? Were they selfish, arrogant, manipulative, attention-seeking? Now I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. How might you possess that same trait, even in a small way? This is what Jung called projection. We see in others what we refuse to see in ourselves. But the moment you understand this dynamic, something incredible happens. You become immune to manipulation. Because here's what Jung realized. When someone tries to guilt you or shame you, they're not actually responding to your behavior. They're responding to their own suppressed shadow. The person who calls you selfish for setting boundaries, they're projecting their own disowned selfishness. The person who accuses you of being cold for not being emotionally available, they're projecting their own fear of emotional intimacy. And the reason this manipulation works so well is because you're also disconnected from your shadow. When someone accuses you of being selfish, instead of recognizing this as their projection, you panic. You think, oh no, maybe I am selfish. Maybe I am a bad person. And then you give them exactly what they want. But when you own your shadow consciously, when you can say, yes, I am selfish sometimes and that's perfectly human, the manipulation loses all its power, because you can't shame someone for something they've already accepted about themselves. Jung called this process individuation, becoming a whole, integrated person instead of a collection of masks and repressions. But here's what most people don't understand about individuation. It's not a comfortable process. It's not about becoming a better person in the way society defines goodness. It's about becoming real. And real people are dangerous to systems that depend on control and manipulation. Get ready to look into the eyes of those who benefit from your suppression, because in the next section, we're going to explore Jung's most radical insight about human nature. And here comes Jung's greatest revelation about why embracing your darkness is actually the path to authentic power and unshakable inner peace. Here's Jung's most radical insight that will change everything for you. The moment you stop running from your darkness and start owning it consciously, you become completely unmanipulatable. Think about this. What would happen if, the next time someone tried to shame you for being selfish, you simply said, "You're right. I am being selfish right now, and I'm okay with that"? What would happen if you stopped defending yourself and started owning your full humanity? The manipulation would stop working immediately. This is what Jung meant when he said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But he took it one step further. When you understand and own what irritates you about yourself, others can no longer use it as a weapon against you. But here's the most important part. This isn't about becoming a selfish, angry, or destructive person. It's about having conscious access to these energies when they're appropriate and useful. Conscious anger gives you the energy to set boundaries and protect what you value. Conscious selfishness prevents others from exploiting your resources and energy. Conscious superiority allows you to recognize your genuine strengths and stop false humility from keeping you small. Jung understood that the shadow contains not just our capacity for destruction, but also our unrealized potential for strength, creativity, and personal power. When you suppress your shadow, you don't just suppress your darkness, You suppress your light as well. This is why truly integrated people have such a powerful presence. They're not fighting internal wars between good and bad parts of themselves. They're not exhausted from maintaining a perfect image. They have access to their full spectrum of human emotions and can use them consciously and appropriately. And this terrifies people who depend on your compliance. When you stop being apologetic about your boundaries, manipulators lose their primary tool. When you stop feeling guilty about your needs, energy vampires can no longer feed off your self-sacrifice. When you stop hiding your strength to make others comfortable, you naturally attract people who appreciate authenticity over performance. But I'm not going to lie to you. This transformation is not without cost. Some people in your life will not be able to handle your wholeness. They've become addicted to the version of you that was always available, always accommodating, always apologetic for taking up space. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he also understood that becoming authentic often means becoming lonely, at least temporarily, as you separate yourself from relationships built on false versions of yourself. The question is, are you ready to be misunderstood by people who never really knew you anyway? Are you ready to lose relationships that were draining your life force? Are you ready to stop performing goodness and start living authentically? But before we get there, we need to understand what this transformation actually looks like and why the temporary discomfort is worth a lifetime of psychological freedom. First comes the silence. When you stop explaining yourself, stop defending your boundaries, stop apologizing for your humanity, there's an uncomfortable quiet where your old patterns used to be. The people around you will notice immediately. They'll push harder against your boundaries, trying to get the old you back. They'll accuse you of changing, of becoming cold, of thinking you're better than everyone else. And here's the test. Will you apologize and return to your old patterns, or will you sit in the discomfort of being misunderstood? Jung called this the dark night of the soul, the period where you're no longer who you used to be, but you haven't yet become who you're meant to be. It's the space between masks, and it feels vulnerable and uncertain. But then something extraordinary begins to happen. The energy you were spending on internal conflict, the constant battle between your authentic self and your performed self, that energy becomes available for creation, for growth, for pursuing what actually matters to you. The mental space you were using to manage everyone else's emotions becomes available for your own dreams and goals. And the most shocking part, the people worth having in your life start to respect you more, not less. Because authenticity is magnetic in a world full of performers. Genuine strength is attractive in a culture of people-pleasers. Conscious selfishness inspires others to value themselves more. You'll discover what Jung meant when he said, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." Because when you're no longer afraid of your own darkness, you stop projecting it onto others. When you own your full humanity, you can see others clearly instead of through the filter of your own repressions and fears. This is true psychological maturity, not the absence of darkness, but the conscious integration of all aspects of yourself, not the performance of goodness, but the embodiment of wholeness. But I ask you now, looking into your eyes through this screen, how long will you continue to give your power away to people who don't deserve it? How long will you keep exhausting yourself trying to be someone else's version of good? Jung understood that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Your suppressed shadow is creating your reality from behind the scenes. Every relationship pattern, every recurring conflict, every way you sabotage yourself, it's all connected to the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. The choice is simple, but not easy. You can continue living as a collection of socially acceptable masks, exhausting yourself with internal warfare and wondering why you attract manipulation and disrespect. Or you can begin the process of individuation, becoming whole, becoming real, becoming unmanipulatable. Some of you watching this are already feeling the resistance. The voice in your head saying, "But if I acknowledge my selfishness, won't I become a terrible person? If I own my capacity for anger, won't I hurt people? If I stop being good, won't everyone leave me?" That's your programming talking. That's the voice of everyone who benefits from your suppression. But here's the truth that perhaps no one has told you. The people who truly love you want you to be whole, not perfect. They want you to be real, not good. They want you to be free, not controllable. And those who can't handle your wholeness, they were never really in relationship with you anyway. They were in relationship with your mask, and masks make terrible companions for a lifetime. Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But on the other side of that terror is something extraordinary. Psychological freedom, authentic relationships, and the kind of inner peace that comes from no longer being at war with yourself." So I'm going to leave you with this question, and I want you to answer it honestly in the comments below. Are you ready to choose wholeness over goodness? Are you ready to stop apologizing for being human? Are you ready to integrate your shadow and become unmanipulatable? Write in the comments, "I choose wholeness." Not because it's easy, but because you're ready to be free. And if you found this video helpful, share it with someone who's exhausting themselves trying to be perfect. Because the world needs more whole people and fewer good people pretending to be something they're not. The question is, will you be one of them?